Now in this section, we'll be dealing with the biochemistry and the effects of the rigor mortis. What happens at the biochemical level, in general, I've already told you that there is an ATP depletion and the actin and the myosin filaments coagulates together, and that basically causes the stiffening of the muscles. So what are the effects of this rigor mortis on the body? We'll be discussing that in detail. Rigor mortis in other tissues, how does it occur? The biochemistry and the effects of the rigor mortis is very important. And then we'll be coming on to the cadaveric spasm, the heat, and the cold stiffening. All of these last three phenomena can be confused with the normal rigor mortis that occurs in the human body. And so we have to differentiate them. Now, rigor mortis in other tissues. First of all, rigor mortis can develop in the iris, and that will basically cause the unequal pupils. It can be a part of the heart, which will cause the ventricular contractions. The dartos muscles of the scrotum compress the testis, epididymis, and the seminal vesicles. And the erector pili muscles, that will cause the goose flesh. Now this phenomena is also known as the cutis anserine. This cutis anserine phenomena is also a part of the deaths caused by the drowning. So we have to differentiate it, whether it was due to the rigor mortis that the erector pili muscles are erected, or whether it is due to the goose flesh phenomena due to the drowning. We have to differentiate that. Now what happens here at the biochemical level, this diagram is showing the actin and the myosin filaments over here. The ATP supplies are depleted after death, and that depends upon person to person, what was the condition of the body, what was the bodily state, whether the person was in starvation, or was there any prerequisites, was there any pathological conditions that he was suffering from. Your body uses the oxygen you breathe to make the adenosine triphosphate, and ATP attaches to the myosin and forces it to let go of actin. So we need ATP to let myosin go off this actin filaments. And if this ATP is not present over there, what will happen that it will cling on to that, the actin myosin filaments will cling on to the actin filaments. The nerve impulses set off a biochemical reaction that causes the myosin to stick to actin. Now what happens here is the two molecules lock together, pulling the muscles' thick and thin filaments towards each other. And this is the whole. This diagram is basically explaining the whole underlying process that is causing the rigor mortis after death. Now the cadaveric spasm. How do you define cadaveric spasm? Cadaveric spasm is a rare form of muscular stiffening that occurs at the moment of death and persists into the period of rigor mortis. Basically, this diagram below shows the development of the rigor mortis, and it can be the cadaveric spasm as well. Why is the cadaveric spasm important? The emotional deaths, for example, deaths due to drowning, are highlighted by the cadaveric spasms, and the mountain accidents are also highlighted by the cadaveric spasm. Now, why are the cadaveric spasms important? In the fists, if there are some materials that you can see, there can be some parts of the clothing that the person clenched on before he was thrown into that accident. That can really point towards the investigation or towards the solving of the crime cases. So this cadaveric spasm is very important, and sometimes we find a lot of evidences due to this phenomena, cadaveric spasm. Now, rigor mortis versus cadaveric spasm. How will we differentiate whether it is the rigor mortis or the cadaveric spasm? The onset is delayed after death, that is 2 to 3 hours. The duration is approximately 12 to 24 hours. The onset is instantaneous in case of cadaveric spasm, and the duration is few hours until it is replaced by the rigor. The normal rigor is obviously happening side by side in such cases. Now, intensity comparatively is moderate in cases of the rigor mortis, and the intensity of the spasm is comparatively very strong in cases of cadaveric spasm. Now, the mechanism of formation, the breakdown of the ATP below the critical level. The mechanism of formation is unknown, but predisposing factors, that is excitement, fear, fatigue, exhaustion, nervous tension, contraction of the muscles at the time of death, All of this can contribute to the development of the cadaveric spasm. Now, all muscles of the body are affected gradually, and selected muscles which were in the state of contraction at the time of death are affected. Now, there's another phenomena which is known as heat stiffening. It can also be confused with the rigor mortis. So we have to keep that in mind as well. Now, what happens here is if the body is exposed to intense temperatures, there is denaturation and coagulation of the muscle proteins, and there is muscular shortening. Now, what happens here in this case is the muscular shortening is confused with the muscular contractions. So we have to keep in mind that these muscular contractions or these shortening is caused by the atmosphere and is not due to the rigor mortis. Now, what will happen here is if the body temperatures are brought to the normal states, the normal rigor mortis phenomena can be observed in such cases. Now, coming on to another phenomena which is known as cold stiffening. Cold stiffening, as the name indicates, it's basically when the body is exposed to very low temperatures. And what happens here is why is there a contraction or the shortening of the muscles? Is there is a solidification of the subcutaneous fat and the muscles. The freezing of the synovial fluid in the joints occur. There is the rigor mortis is halted and the thawing occurs. And that basically causes the subcutaneous fat hardening. So the cold stiffening is not even directly related to the muscular shortening. It is basically the fat is basically hardened, the subcutaneous fat is hardened, and it is confused with the shortening of the muscles. So what will happen here is when the body is brought to normal room temperatures, all the subcutaneous fat hardening will subside away, and then we can focus on the development of the rigor mortis and how is it developing and what is the time since death. So these confusing phenomena, these cold stiffening, these heat stiffenings, and the cadaveric spasm, of course, they can be confused with the rigor mortis. When we are dealing with the case of any unsolved crime, we can always keep in mind all of these relative phenomena. There is never a clear picture when we are investigating such a case, and so we have to keep all these factors in mind. What were the environmental conditions in which the body was placed? And what were the predisposing conditions of the person? For example, if he's suffering from any disease, from any malnutrition disease, or any starvation phenomena is over there, we have to consider that in mind as well. So in this section, we dealt with all the phenomena which can be confused with the normal phenomena of rigor mortis, that is basically the stiffening of the muscles after death, as it is an early sign after death and is very important medico-legally because it points towards the time since death and obviously towards the emotional state of the person and towards the environmental conditions in which he was placed at the time of death. All of these eventually contribute towards solving any unsolved mystery which we deal with. Thank you for watching sqadia.com.